The scent of fresh paint clung to the cold morning like something shameful. It hadn't dried yet. Streaks of crimson slashed across the granite face of the war memorial, dripping onto the reeds beneath. Someone had scrawled foreign letters across the stone, looped and unfamiliar, deliberate and angry. It looked like a cry, or a prayer, or a curse. Yonas stood still across the street, his breath fogging in the brittle air. A cluster of old men in dark coats stared at the vandalism, murmuring. One of them, a veteran who always sat on the same bench outside the bakery, turned slowly. His gaze settled on Yonas like frostbite. No words. Just eyes. Yonas kept walking. His boots thudded against the cobbles, heavy with the kind of silence that wasn't just quiet, it was deliberate, watchful. At 17, he had perfected this gait. Not too fast, not too slow. Eyes forward, hands in pockets. Never meet a stare longer than you need to. Not flinching wasn't pride. It was armor. At the school gate, a group of students clustered under the archway were talking too fast and too loud. Yonas approached, and as always, the conversation snapped into fragments. A laugh died mid-breath. He didn't slow, didn't glance. Just passed through the broken sound. In the classroom, the desk smelled of old varnish and anxiety. The crucifix above the blackboard hung slightly crooked, as always. Ms. Dworzak called for silence with her usual brittle smile, but it was already there. Yonas sat at the back, as he always did. He watched the dust in the sunlight. Waited. Third period brought someone new. He walked in without ceremony, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a black turtleneck and charcoal coat, clean-shaven with eyes that didn't flinch. Dr. Lema. Literature, temporary assignment. Accent mild, vowels a little too clean for the region. He didn't smile. This year, we'll be reading not only Polish authors, he said simply, but those who were exiled in their own homes. The silence deepened. A few students shifted. One girl scoffed softly. Yonas stared at him. Not just because of the man's skin, though it struck him like a held breath, but because the man didn't shrink, didn't try to charm. He existed without apology. After class, Yonas walked quickly, avoided the gazes. Behind him, someone muttered, two of them now. He didn't look back. At home, the apartment above the library hummed with old radiators and soup. Merrick, his father, stirred a pot and didn't mention the memorial. He never did mention much. Their conversations were made of half-sentences and safe topics, books, weather, the football team that always lost. But that night, Merrick said quietly, "It'll blow over. Don't make noise." Yonas nodded. Ate. Read. Said nothing. Later, lying in bed, he tried to remember what Amharic looked like on paper. He couldn't. He'd never learned. But the guilt sat heavy anyway, like something waiting to be deserved. In his dreams, the memorial wept red, and the juniper trees whispered in a language he wished he understood. The next morning, the paint was gone, but the stone remembered. Faint stains clung to the seams, like blood that had soaked too deep. Someone had scrubbed hard, probably Merrick. He worked maintenance at the school, but when things happened in the town square, he was always the one called. Yonas walked past it again, slower this time. No one lingered now. Just the memorial, a little too clean, surrounded by silence that reeked of decision. At school, the corridors hissed with half-words. Shouldn't be here. Always been quiet, but you never know. The weight of their caution wrapped around Yonas like wet wool. Even teachers paused too long before greeting him, as if words might implicate them. In history class, Mr. Gajek lectured on resistance fighters of the 1940s, heroes who died protecting Poland's soul. His voice rose with pride when describing the purity of their vision, their sacrifices. They defended what was ours, what was sacred. Yonas stared at the names on the blackboard, Zukowski, Wysocki, Bialek, and felt their weight press him deeper into his seat. Not enemies, but not allies either. During break, he stood by the window overlooking the courtyard. Snow dusted the benches. Girls huddled near the heaters, boys kicked at the ice. A few of them looked up, found his gaze, and looked away. When he turned, Dr. Lema was there. "You read much?" the man asked. unbothered by the glances still floating like gnats around them. Yonas nodded. What? Mostly Polish. Some English. Whatever's in the library. You should come by after class, Dr. Lema said. I have something for you. It was not an offer. Not a command either. Just a fact stated plainly. Then he walked away. Yonas didn't go. Not that day. Instead, he slipped out through the back gate after school, took the long way home, through the old path lined with juniper trees. The air there felt different. Sharper. Cleaner. The kind of place where the town's noise couldn't follow. He walked until he couldn't hear his name in anyone's mouth. When he reached the clearing, he sat on a rock half buried in snow, pulled out a worn paperback, Adam Zagajewski's poems, borrowed from the library 2 years ago and never returned. The lines spoke of absence, of ghost cities, of longing without words. He clung to those verses like they were anchors in water too deep. He remembered being 5 or 6, holding Zofia's hand at Mass. People had stared. She whispered, "Ignore them, Kochany. We're stronger than their eyes." Her grip had been steady, warm. Now the only warmth came from friction, from trying not to vanish. Later that evening, at home, Merrick scrubbed his hands in the sink like he couldn't get the paint off. Yonas sat at the table, silent. The radio murmured in the corner, some distant voice talking about immigration, tradition, threats. Merrick glanced at him once. Said nothing. Yonas didn't ask, because he knew the rules. He wasn't from here. He could speak the language, sing the hymns, kneel in the pews. But the land still held him at arm's length, like a guest it forgot to invite. And even now, 17 years in, he still waited for permission to exist without explanation. The following week, the cold tightened. Even the birds abandoned the square. But Yonas noticed how silence changed shape, less avoidance now, more watching. Students didn't just pretend he wasn't there. They marked his presence like a wound they couldn't look at directly. He became something waiting to be addressed, but no one dared first. On Tuesday, a flyer appeared in the corridor. An after-school discussion, literature and exile, a talk with Dr. Lema. Typed plainly, pinned just below the crucifix by the staff room. By noon, someone had scrawled over it in black marker, "Keep politics out of our school." The marker was wiped clean by Merrick before the final bell. That evening, Yonas lingered outside the staff lounge. Inside, laughter, coffee mugs, the low hum of teachers reclaiming themselves. He turned to leave, but the door opened before he could. "You're late," Dr. Lema said, not surprised to find him there. "Come in." Yonas followed. The professor's office was small but full, shelves of worn books, pages dog-eared and annotated with furious pencil marks. A kettle steamed quietly on a corner table. No pictures, just words everywhere. Names like Baldwin, Danicat, Soinka, Herbert. Dr. Lema handed him a book without ceremony. Thin spine, white cover. Citizen by Claudia Rankin. English. The title shimmered faintly in silver. "It's poetry," he said. "Or something like it. About how things feel when you're always almost accepted." Yonas turned it over in his hands. "Why give it to me?" "Because you're the only one who'll understand it beyond the words." That answer sat like thunder behind his ribs. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. Dr. Lema didn't push. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, eyes tracing the spines of his books like old friends. After a moment, "You know, the worst thing isn't the hatred. It's the way they demand your silence. That's the real theft." Yonas looked up. "And they dress it up as politeness," Lema continued. "As not making things worse. As, why can't you just let it go? You know the lines, I'm sure." He did. Intimately. "I tried to be perfect," Yonas said finally. "All the time. Thought maybe then they'd stop noticing." Dr. Lema smiled, not kindly. "They notice more. That's the curse. The better you are, the more dangerous they think you might become." Yonas left the room with the book pressed to his chest like something warm. Outside, snow had started to fall again, softly, steadily. The courtyard was empty. He read through the night. Not all at once, page by page, word by word, like each was a breath he didn't know he needed. The text didn't console him. It named him. unflinchingly, as if someone had finally written down the exact shape of his silence. At school the next day, he found a notice pinned to the front door. Due to recent disturbances and in light of community concerns, Professor Lema's seminar is canceled indefinitely. We appreciate your understanding. Signed by the principal. No explanation. No pretense. Inside the hallway, whispers bloomed again. He was too much. This isn't Warsaw. Things were fine before. Yonas walked to his locker. He opened it, slipped the book inside. Not to hide it, but to keep it close. He didn't see Dr. Lema again that week. But something had changed. The world hadn't softened, but a new room had opened inside him. One with no windows, but walls strong enough to lean on. The investigation began with formality, typed questions, polite requests, the illusion of impartiality. Yonas was called to the principal's office. The door closed behind him with a softness more menacing than a slam. "We're simply talking to everyone," the principal said. Standard procedure. Yonas sat straight. But not everyone was called in, were they? A pause. "Well, you understand, the language used on the monument. It was Amharic, wasn't it?" "I wouldn't know." The principal blinked. "You don't speak it?" "No." Another pause. Her fingers tapped the desk. "I see." That was the tone that meant she didn't, or refused to. Yonas returned to class under heavier stares. They no longer avoided looking, they watched. Not with curiosity, but calculation. A girl he used to partner with in biology pulled her chair an inch away when he sat. It was quiet, small. Enough to understand everything. At home that evening, Merrick sat silently at the table, soup steaming untouched. His hands were rough from scrubbing. He looked older. He didn't ask what happened at school. Yonas didn't offer. But later, in the hallway, he heard his father on the phone, voice low, tight. "Yes, he's been quiet. Always is. He's never caused trouble." A pause. "No, he's not that kind of boy." Yonas stood still, felt the floor tilt beneath him. That kind. What kind? The kind who speaks? The kind who dares? That night, something cracked. The next morning, the school's gymnasium stank of smoke. Someone had lit a fire in one of the bins. Small, contained, but enough to bring police. Enough to start a flood of rumors. Yonas knew the script already. He felt it write itself around him. That afternoon, someone scrawled across the side of the Lyceum in bold letters, "Let them go back." It was cleaned within the hour, but not before everyone saw. Dr. Lema returned just once to gather his things. Yonas saw him across the corridor, calm as always, coat slung over his arm. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Later, a folded paper slipped into Jonas's locker. No signature. Inside, a quote from the book. "Because white men can't /police their imagination /black men are dying." Nothing more. Yonas held the paper for a long time before tearing it into 4 clean pieces. He didn't throw them away. Just placed them between the pages of his notebook. At dinner, Merrick stirred his stew and said, "Just keep your head down. Don't give them a reason." Yonas looked at him, long and hard. For the first time, he felt something colder than betrayal, resignation. "Even silence is a reason," he said. Merrick didn't answer. Outside, the snow returned. Soft, unhurried, indifferent. But somewhere inside Yonas, a match had been lit. He didn't go to school the next day. He left the apartment early, backpack slung over one shoulder, told Merrick he was going to the library. Merrick only nodded, relief masked poorly as approval. "Good," he said. "Keep routine. Don't let them push you out." Yonas walked past the library, past the bakery and the shuttered ice cream shop, out through the back roads that led into the woods. The juniper path welcomed him like it always did, quiet, unjudging. Here, the world thinned. The air grew sharper, cleaner. It carried the scent of sap and snow, and something older, wilder. He dropped his bag beside the same rock he'd always sat on. Sat cross-legged. Pulled out nothing. He needed no books today. Only space. In the silence, the pain he'd been pressing down began to swell. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady, like roots pushing through stone. He remembered Zofia again. Her arms were warm. She had the kind of laugh that made strangers smile. When he was small and asked why his skin was different, she said, "Because you were made in a place where the sun loves you more." She'd carried him through crowds, shielded him with smiles, sang lullabies in Polish and nonsense sounds. When she died, no one knew the songs anymore. Marek loved, but not like that. His love was maintenance, fixing, feeding, defending, but never naming, never healing. Now even he had begun to look at Yonas with the same eyes as the town, afraid not of what he'd done, but of what he might be forced to mean. Yonas pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, the quote from the locker. He didn't read it. He knew it now by heart. It didn't matter that it was written in English. It burned in his bones in every language. His breath came heavy in the cold. He let it. He let himself be tired. For once, he did not try to make himself smaller. A crack of footsteps on ice startled him. He turned. No one. Just a deer in the distance, watching him. Pale and thin, almost spectral. They stared at each other for a moment. Then it fled. Yonas whispered, "I'm not chasing you." And he wasn't. Not anymore. When he returned home, the apartment was dim. Marek sat on the edge of the bed, coat still on, like he hadn't moved in hours. "I got a call from the principal," he said. "They said you didn't show. I needed time. You can't just disappear. People are talking. They'll think you're hiding." "I am hiding," Yonas said. "I've been hiding for years." Marek stood. His face was tight. Not angry, scared. "Do you think I haven't tried to protect you? All these years, do you think it was easy raising you here? Alone?" Jonas's voice didn't rise. "Then why do you always ask me to disappear when things get hard?" Marek said nothing. His fists clenched and unclenched. "I'm not ashamed of you," he whispered. Yonas nodded once. "But you're ashamed of the cost." He walked into his room and closed the door behind him, sat at his desk, pulled out a blank sheet of paper, wrote a title at the top. "What you see when you look at me." Then he began. The next morning, the school hummed with anticipation. An assembly had been called, officially to address the recent unrest, unofficially to contain the growing unease that leaked from one classroom to another. Yonas walked through the gate slowly. He had returned not to blend in but to be seen, even if only once, fully. His steps were measured. His silence now deliberate, not fearful. Whispers pulsed around him. Near the lockers, a boy from his year, Camille, tall, popular, forgettable, stood blocking the hall. He looked Yonas straight in the eye. "Why don't you just admit it?" he said, voice low but pointed. "You think we're all blind? Everyone knows it was you." Yonas didn't blink. "Everyone knows." "No one saw." Camille scoffed. "Doesn't matter. Only one person around here writes in that language." "I don't." Camille stepped closer. "Then prove it." Yonas stepped aside. "I don't owe you that." He walked past without touching him. That, more than anything, was the wound, refusal without apology. In the auditorium, the principal stood stiff beneath the crucifix. Her speech was full of platitudes, respect, unity, tradition. No mention of race, of vandalism, of Dr. Lema. Just a fog of neutrality, dense and suffocating. When she finished, she asked if anyone wanted to say something. A formality. No one ever did. Yonas stood. Chairs creaked. Some snickered. A teacher cleared her throat. He walked to the front, the silence falling behind him like a tide. Reached into his backpack. Pulled out a single page. The title at the top still smudged from his thumb. He didn't read it. Just looked up. "I've lived here since I was 4. That's 13 years. Longer than some of you have been alive. I speak the language, sing the anthems, say the prayers. But it's never been enough." A pause. The room breathed, shallow and nervous. "I walk down the street, and I'm not Polish. I sit in class, and I'm not from here. I do well, and I'm suspicious. I stay silent, and I'm hiding something." He looked at the principal. "You say you want unity. But unity doesn't mean pretending we're all the same. It means letting people be seen as they are." He raised the page. "This is what I wrote. I'm not going to read it, because I don't owe you my pain to prove I'm human." He turned, walked back to his seat. The room didn't applaud. It didn't need to. Something had shifted. Not in them. In him. Afterwards, a few students looked at him differently. Not warmly, not sympathetically, just clearly, as if a fog had lifted and revealed someone they couldn't explain away. That night, Merrick knocked on his door. Didn't enter. "You were brave," he said. Yonas said nothing. Merrick added, "It'll get harder before it gets easier." Yonas nodded once. "I know." The door stayed closed, but the silence between them softened, just slightly. The statement didn't change the town. Not all at once. Maybe not at all. But it changed how the silence felt. No longer tight-lipped erasure, it was now a choice everyone had to make. Pretend they hadn't heard, or live with the fact that they had. Some chose discomfort. In the hallway, one teacher, Mr. Sobchak, who never made eye contact before, nodded once at Yonas as he passed. A younger girl from another class said "thank you" in a whisper too soft to catch fully. But others stiffened, withdrew. A group of parents petitioned to have external influences removed from the curriculum. A church sermon, thinly veiled, warned against modern ideologies that threatened tradition. Yonas knew the backlash as well. Truth always came with invoices. He didn't flinch. One afternoon, he was summoned again, not by the principal, but by the town's cultural committee. A small room above the town hall, thick with tobacco and stiff chairs. They called it a conversation. "You've spoken out," said the chairman, a man with a face like folded paper. It stirred things. Maybe unnecessarily. Yonas kept his voice level. "Was anything I said false?" "That's not the point." "Then what is?" Another man sighed. "Tone. Timing. We're a fragile community. And I'm supposed to carry that fragility?" he asked. They didn't answer. Just shifted papers. Back at school, Dr. Lema's office was empty now, the shelves dusted and hollow. But on the inside of the bottom drawer, someone had etched a line into the wood. "We are never out of place. The place is out of itself." No one claimed to have seen it. No one scrubbed it off. At home, Merrick brought home a new pair of gloves for Yonas, simple, warm, nothing said. It was his way of offering peace. They sat one evening watching a football game in silence. At halftime, Merrick cleared his throat. "Your mother," he began, then stopped. "Tried again. Zofia, she always believed you'd change things. That you'd be more than they could see." Yonas looked at him. "You didn't." Merrick shook his head. "I was afraid. Not for you. For the world you'd have to walk through." Yonas swallowed. "I'm afraid too." They didn't say more. They didn't need to. That night, he walked alone to the trail. Snow had hardened the path, made it crisp underfoot. The juniper trees stood bare but tall. The forest didn't shift around him. Didn't expect him to shrink or explain. He whispered a line from the book, one he hadn't spoken aloud yet. "I feel most colored when I am thrown against a sharp white background." And then added his own, "But I will not disappear just to soften the contrast." The woods accepted it, held it. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. But he had already answered the most important question. Spring arrived late that year, as if the earth itself hesitated to exhale. But the snow receded, slowly, revealing grass that remembered how to grow. Buds clung to branches like questions waiting to be asked. In the town square, the war memorial stood untouched. No new paint, no new graffiti, but fresh flowers had appeared, laid quietly at the base, not by the church or any known organization. A small sign beside them read only, "Memory is not possession." No one claimed them. No one removed them either. At school, Yonas moved through the halls unshielded. Not invisible, not invincible, simply there. Most students still avoided eye contact, some out of shame, others out of stubbornness. But the ones who didn't had learned to see him differently. Not completely, not deeply, but truthfully. In literature class, a new substitute read aloud from Bruno Schultz. When she stumbled over a passage, Yonas corrected her pronunciation gently. She thanked him without hesitation. Later that week, a younger boy, quiet, pale, always sketching in the corners, left a folded piece of paper on Jonas's desk. A pencil drawing. A boy standing in a forest of towering junipers, his shadow longer than the trees, but solid. Grounded. No name. Just an active witness. Merrick and Yonas spoke more now. Not always directly. But the silences between them grew lighter, as if finally allowed to breathe. They repaired the broken hinge on the bathroom door together, baked bread badly, argued about music. One evening, over a cluttered dinner table, Merrick asked, "Do you think you'll leave?" Yonas thought for a long time. "Yes," he said, "but not because I'm running." Merrick nodded. "When you go, leave a trail, so someone else can follow." They didn't toast, didn't hug, just ate, and that was enough. On the last day of school before summer break, Yonas walked the trail one more time. The trees had thickened, leaves whispering overhead in a language not his, but familiar now. The air was rich with green and the faint, grounding scent of juniper. He stopped at the clearing, sat on the stone, closed his eyes. He didn't imagine a different face, a different skin. He didn't pretend the world was better than it was. He just sat, rooted, visible. And for the first time, he felt not like a question, but like an answer the world hadn't yet learned how to read.